Good night, good night. How you doing? My name is Irma J. This is part two. It's a battle too big. Now he was afraid that God reduced it down to 300 men, and he started out with 22,000 men. Now he was afraid, and God had to encourage him, because you kept fighting in your own strength. God wants you to fight in His strength, so He can get the glory. So you have 300 men. Now, knowing the way you can fight all those people, in your strength, God automatically gonna get the glory because nobody can. Only person can fight with 300 men and get glory is God. So, while each man held his position round the camp, all the of the Mennonites, ran crying out and flee. No, so when the 300 trumpets sound of the Lord caused the men throughout the camp to turn on each other, and they swore. Now, see what happened was, now he was scared the whole time, scared the whole time. But what God did, God had made the men turn on their own self. Had them in confusion. Now you were scared to fight with just only 300 men. That's why God said, "Trust me." He made them turn on their own self. He gave them confusion. So Galilee warrior had watched as the army of Mammon had fell into panic, confusion. Panic and confusion and disorder retreat. Not one of the soldiers, to draw a sword. Now see what happened. Now they ain't even had to fight. They're up there watching their own men that was in confused and panic. They start fighting and swelling up, their own self. So Galilee men, they ain't even had to pick up a fight. They ain't even had to pick up the sword, because they beat their own self up. And he was scared for nothing. He was afraid for nothing. Now Galilee, small army could never have achieved such a victory in their own strength. God wanted to demonstrate, to Israel that victory depend on strength, on numbers, but not, God wanted to use example. That victory don't depend on numbers. It's depend on obedience and commitment to Him. Even though he was frightened and he was afraid, he still obeyed. He still used the 300 men that God chose. And so through Galilee, he felt small and powerless. So God would be mighty and powerful. And God wanted, him to fight and lean on His strength, not his own strength. Now God showed him you don't need a big armor, you just need a mighty God. God had to demonstrate to him, you good with big numbers. God trying to show him you don't need big numbers. You don't need a whole armor to fight when you got mighty God with you. All you need was a mighty God. And he was so used to having all those men. So God want you to lean on my strength, not your own strength. And so God wanted him, and so God had got victory. His men didn't even have to fight. Just stand up there and watch the other men, in confusion and panic. And so they were slicing each other up, to where they didn't even had to pick up a sword and do anything. They had victory. They had victory when they even had to do nothing. And God had showed him. That's all he had to do was trust God. Because God said, we're gonna do this here with 300 men. And God put them in confusion and panic. They didn't know what to do with themselves. They started swapping, swapping each other up, slicing each other up. But they, Galilee and his men just stood up there and watched. They didn't even had to pick up a sword. That was a demonstration God had to show him. Stop always fighting in your own strength, using all the men. So God's saying, when God on our side, we don't need a whole army, to be on our side to fight a battle. All we need is God. and lean on his strength, and he will make it happen. So that's all I have for you today. The battle was too big, for Galilee. It was too big. God had to reduce it down to 300 men. He was so afraid and scared, but God had to encourage him, and all the while he was afraid for nothing because God had put them in confusion and panic where they start slicing their own stuff up, and he had victory, without even doing anything. God had to show him, lean on my strength. Lean on my strength. And stop worrying about a whole army. A lot of us wants to worry about a whole army if somebody coming against you, you go get a whole team of people. And God said you don't need that. You don't need that. So that's an example had God showed him. God had to get victory on his own because he always got victory because he was always fighting in his own strength. He had to have 23,000 of men. But God said, I'm on your side right now. So we're going to reduce this down to 300 men. So that's all I have for you today. Y'all have a blessed day, and I'll see y'all in the next video.